Welcome to Hospice Explained. This podcast is intended as an educational aid and is only a resource to begin to understand the end-of-life season. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek advice from your physician or qualified members of your healthcare team with any questions regarding a medical condition.
Hello and welcome to Hospice Explained, episode number 109. I'm your host, Marie Betcher, RN. Hospice Explained has new communities, one for patients and one for professionals. These communities are focused on education, isolation, and mentoring. The links will be in my show notes. In addition, for support, Hospice Explained has 3 affiliates. If you use one of these links, Hospice Explained will get a small commission. So please and thank you. The first one is the Death Doula School by Casey Gaconio, who has been on the show a couple times. It's a comprehensive program that will empower you to make a profound difference as a death doula. I also have an affiliate with the Death Deck and the EOL Deck. These cards help you start conversations that matter. In addition, DNA is Love, also a guest on Hospice Explained in the past. They are offering listeners a 5% discount, and they have a menu of customized DNA-filled products for your loved ones and pets. On this episode of Hospice Explained, I am interviewing David Woods Bartley. David is a speaker, trainer, writer, and advocate. David is a dynamic storyteller and trainer who opens minds, touches hearts, and inspires others to action by sharing his journey from mental hellness to mental wellness. David shines the light on the issue of mental illness and opens the doors to the possibility of mental health. David has an ebook, My Troubled Mind, Now Calm, essays on depression, hope, and healing. I will also place a link for that in the show notes. And I have David on today's show for encouragement for mental health. As I often have focused on physical changes, I want to highlight David as he speaks from experience. He speaks from the heart with a storyteller's craft that engages and moves audiences from a variety of ages and worldviews. His efforts are a positive force for mental health. But audience, please note, this podcast is going to discuss a very difficult subject that does need a trigger warning for the abuses suffered by David. Thank you for joining me on Hospice Explained. Welcome, David. I'm so glad you're on the podcast. David, this is just the easiest part. You just start telling us your story.
Well, one, thank you, Marie, for being here. And I love you for a lot of different reasons already. One, that you're a nurse. My beloved mother was a nurse. And so nurses are amazing. And thank you for doing your podcast. And thank you for delving into these really difficult subjects we don't talk about a lot. So for me, 61 years old, live in Northern California. I'm engaged to the love of my life. And I grew up, though, on the East Coast, born and in the youngest of 4 boys. My brothers are the 3 best men I know. I absolutely adore them. The middle 2, I will be having lunch with, literally, after we're done with the podcast today. And my eldest, who's 11 years older, has always been much more my dad than my brother. And this became really a necessity because our father died and I was just 7. And so John, my eldest brother, stepped in and really provided me with, I've lived with him. He guides me. And to this day, he and my beloved fiance, Summer, are my 2 North Stars. So grew up on the East Coast and had, kind of the standard sort of upbringing. Mom remarried, and my beloved bonus dad, I don't like stepdad, bonus dad had 9 children. So, Marie, I grew up as number 12 of 13, and that is the correct number. I'm not making that number up. And 7 boys, 6 girls, and life was good. And during my upbringing, I was in the Cub Scouts, and then became part of what they call the Webelos, which is the intermediate period before you go from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts, and then joined the Boy Scouts. And I joined the Boy Scouts because my big brother, my dad, John, had been an Eagle Scout, and I wanted to do everything that my big brother did. And so early on, unfortunately, I had a horrific experience where a Boy Scout leader raped me on multiple occasions. And Marie, every time this monster did those things to me, before he would let me go, he had the audacity, really the evilness, to look me in the eye and say these words. I will never forget these words. Where he said, "David, what happened was an initiation, and all the boys go through it, but we don't talk about it." And that trauma, as you can imagine, was devastating. Now, as mentioned, I'm 61 years old, and I have lived with crippling, incapacitating, horrific depression for most all my life. And I know when it started when I was 12. And my birth father, James Hamilton Bartley, everybody called him Ham, he had suffered terribly from crippling depression, died of lung cancer because unfortunately he made the poor choice of smoking. But certainly what I know now of battling this thing, I'm sure fighting depression didn't help in any way, shape, or form. But if you look at my three beloved brothers, they have the same genetic influence, and they have no depression at all. And I think for me, I know, and it's common, unfortunately, it's trauma. And it was the trauma of what happened to me as an innocent 12-year-old. And that's when this fight with depression started. So it was in this part of who I was growing up, and went to college in Maryland, and then ultimately made my way out to the West Coast at the end of the 1980s because my middle two brothers I hadn't had enough time with. Moved out to Northern California and was involved with government contracting, and then I got involved with mortgage banking, and I met my first wife, Deanna, and she is an extraordinary soul, and I'm blessed to still be very close with her. And she and I, and in following her love specifically of Boston Terriers, and if you don't know what a Boston Terrier is, and that's kind of like a Frenchie, but has a lot more attitude, we started an animal sanctuary. And it started out small, and it ended up, Marie, over the years became big, and it was an end of life animal sanctuary. And at one point we had 100 animals at any one time. We had 25 horses, we had 23 dogs, all of whom lived in the house. We had 9 potbelly pigs. We had goats and sheep and ducks and geese and bunnies and birds and turtles and fish. We just everything, and we did no adoption because we wanted the ones that nobody wanted. And so animals came and they stayed until, as we like to say, and you get this better than anybody, they made their transition to the big green pasture in the sky. And we became really well known. We did really great work, and I give all credit to Deanna in her creative ways in which we were able to take the level of care for these animals who were dying was like no place in the world. I mean, I think at one point we were the finest sanctuary on the planet. And on June 2nd, 2010, we were the half-page cover story in the life section of USA Today. During this whole time, there was that little thing that begins with a D, depression. And I never talked about it. And it became a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger part of who I am. And there's a chef, David Chang. He's a famous chef, and he fights bipolar, and he has this amazing quote. And the chef says, "When you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true." And I remember when I read that quote, Maria, I'm like, "Oh, chef, dear, yes." So as Dee and I are cruising along with the sanctuary, what I'm believing to be true, because what I'm thinking is I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm stupid, I'm pitiful, I'm grotesque, I'm ugly, I have no redeeming value, and everybody will be so much better off without me. Coupled with the fact, in the words of the great Maya Angelou, who says that there's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story, added to the quote that says, to not have your suffering recognized is an almost unspeakable form of violence. So I'm believing the lies to be true. I have this untold story, and no one knows the degree to which I'm suffering, and it became too much. And just 14 months after being hailed and celebrated and acknowledged and featured in USA Today, on August 31st, 2011, I was standing on a dark spot on the 730-foot tall Forest Hill Bridge, which is just about 30 minutes east of Sacramento, bent over, about to fall 730 feet, but somebody saw me, because that bridge has an infamous reputation, like its more famous cousin in San Francisco. And a first responder came, and he didn't make contact with me at all. He created connection. Because the truth is that the reason I'm here today is because connection creates hope, and hope saves lives. And I was taken off the bridge to an emergency room, and then 15 days in a lockdown psychiatric facility saved my life, and began this journey, as I like to say, from mental illness to mental wellness. And I am now have the incredible blessing here to be with you on this beautiful Sunday.
Wow. I so appreciate that you are so transparent. There is something so difficult sometimes about being transparent to that degree about the pain you suffered. And honestly, how much that pain drove you to where you nearly ended your life. I'm so sorry.
Mm.
But I'm so grateful that you're right, that we are here today. What what direction do you wanna go? Where do you wanna go from here?
I think, I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to live with a mental illness, just to give people who may be listening an idea of how others are suffering. And and that will set up what I want to share. And you and I talked about this at the beginning. What I do now, my profession is to travel broadly, really all over the world, and to share my story from mental illness to mental wellness to really answer four questions. And my talk is called The Why of Suicide and the How of Hope. And the first question is, what happened? Like, and we just talked about what happened. And then, what's it like? And then, what does it take to be well? And then the other Marie is, what can we do? What can we do about this thing called suicide? And I have just a different response. I'm not saying it's right. No, it works. So I think I'd like to just, if I may, is to set up or just give people an idea of like, what is it like? Because so many people are suffering from depression right now, and we have no idea.
David, thank you so much for sharing so far your story, and definitely go the direction you wanna go.
So thank you, one, dear soul. So people always say, like, okay, what's it like? Most people, I mean, the vast majority of people who suffer from depression, you have no clue. Just, and while, and it's, so what I like to say is sometimes what hurts the most can't be seen. It might even maybe be most of the time what hurts the most can't be seen. And the first thing is to distinguish depression is not sadness. And I'm blessed to do work with kids. And you will love this, Marie, how brilliant children are. So I was working with a group of second graders, and it popped into my head. I asked them, I said, hey, is there a difference between sadness and depression? And the kids looked at me like I was an idiot. I'm like, okay, all right. So I said, okay, well, who wants to tell me what's the difference between sadness and depression? And little boy Marie in the front row, like, shoo, hand up, like right away. And I'm like, all right, brother, lay it on me. And here's what he said. He said, yeah, when you're sad, you know why. But when you're depressed, you don't. Oh my God.
That's profound, actually.
I'm like, oh my God. That is incredible.
Wow. Yeah, seriously, it is.
And so I talk about this, I add this in, and the reason is it's not about making people wrong, but it's about helping people to understand so they don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, yeah, they must be depressed, they must be sad. No, no, no. Because depression is this experience, it's an experience, because it's not just a feeling. Because it's a feeling, it's an emotion, it's a thought. Then there's a whole physicality to it. Depression will cause you hurt, physically hurt. And then it physiologically, it takes, we normally have a broad view in which we can see. When I'm in, I don't need to talk about anybody else. When I'm in the space of severe depression, it's like I'm looking through a paper towel roll. I mean, it's like literally my eyes don't work the way they're supposed to work. Like all of this, it is all encompassing. And you go back to what the chef said, when you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true. So it's not like you're stupid. It's none of that. It's just you're just convinced. Like depression is such a great orator. It's such a great presenter. It has this ability. It's like a high-priced lawyer in its ability to convince you of something that is completely false. I mean, I was worried, my God, I was taking care of dying animals and I thought I was completely worthless.
It literally doesn't.
Like, that makes no sense. That's just not like, I mean, it does. And I still fight this.
So David, you're feeling worthless in the midst of being so helpful, and the rest of the world would look in and say, David, you're doing so much, you're making such a difference on this planet, and yet here you are. What happens next?
Well, it just ultimately, because there is no conversation about the internal communication, the conversation I'm having with myself. So now there is the establishment, the development of plans. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to do it? How am I going to rid the world of me? How am I going to give the world this gift? How am I going to do that? And all of this, again, Marie, I can't underscore it enough, that there is no communication of this. This is an internal dialogue. And that's what happens. And you just become convinced. I became convinced. And people will ask, well, gosh, didn't you, it's like, how could you be so selfish? Like, well, but I wasn't being selfish. It's how could I be selfish if I'm going to rid the world of something that is so horrific? Like that is, remember, when you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true. It is that. I didn't hear voices. I didn't see illusions. I didn't, that's what the thoughts became. And it's a word we don't hear a whole lot of. The thoughts became beliefs. And I like to underscore that word because, Marie, we all have certain beliefs. And as soon as I say the word belief, everybody moves into a whole different category of understanding because, we immediately can bring to mind the things that we believe, and people are not going to dissuade us. They're not going to move us off our position of belief. That's the person who is depressed and unfortunately most often becomes suicidal, is now operating on a set of very, very powerful beliefs. And those beliefs then drive the action.
David, I just have to say that I think you're helping people understand. So, honestly, it's touched a lot of people, this thing called suicide, and you're really helping. I believe you're helping people by explaining the thought processes, because I think that's the hardest piece is why didn't they reach out to me? Why didn't they just say, hey, cause how simple, but it's not simple. You're explaining that to us, and I so appreciate this.
Right? No, you're welcome. My life was saved And I have extraordinary people in my life, Marie. And the least I can do is endeavor to give back. And if telling my story from mental wellness to mental wellness in a fight that still continues, and I'll share something in a moment, then I feel like then I can look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, you know what? Good job. Because I still the remnants of being raped as a child, they still impact me. I have terrible body dysmorphia. I hate to look at myself in the mirror. I hate to be naked. I can't stand it. Just if I could shower with my clothes on, I could. I would, but it's still and at 61 years old, having done a tremendous amount of incredibly helpful therapy, it still clings to me. And the I'm really good about if you're my doctor and you say, okay, I want you to take these meds, I'm going to take the meds. I mean, literally, Marie, I have never missed a day of medication. I have never missed a therapy appointment. I have never missed a support group appointment. I am regular. And what happened at the end of last year is I fell into a depth of depression I had never been to before. It was that bad. And became terribly suicidal. And it made no sense because I'm like, wait a second. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. How can this be? And thank God that I'm with the people that I have around me. And it was really my eldest brother, who is again, North Star, along with my beloved fiance, Summer. They were, while I was suffering, they were thinking, okay, what can we do for David? And there was really only one thing as a possibility, and it's something that has a tremendous amount of stigma and fear around it. And thankfully, we tried it, and they call it ECT, or electroconvulsive therapy, so shock therapy. Now, most people, especially people my age, they know One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, and the scene there where somebody had shock therapy and they were catatonic and a zombie. It's nothing like that. And Marie, I've had 32 sessions since the beginning of this year. The most recent was this past Friday. And what I can tell you, changed my life. I like to say that ECT kicked depression's ass. It is unbelievable. I can't believe what it has done for me.
This is actually a very complex thought that I have. I don't really know how to even put it into words, but from what I know and what I think we don't understand the power of certain things and frequencies and how that may have changed your brain.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't understand all the power to some of the treatments that work. That's what's coming through to me. It's like, it's so different, but what a blessing. No matter how it worked, what a blessing that it did.
Yeah, and I still go now. Now my treatments are once a month. I mean, I'm sure I could really delve into it to find out why it works. I could care less. I don't care. Don't care. But just so people know, because the truth of the matter is, Marie, this particular form of therapy has an incredibly high rate of success. But people are afraid of it because what they know is all they know is, okay, wait, I go in, you put electrodes around my head, you put me to sleep, and then you put enough electricity in me to cause me to literally have a seizure, and then you're going to tell me that's helpful. And I'm like, yes, it is helpful. I've done it 32 times, and it's changed my life. I don't feel anything. I go in, I have communication with my amazing psychiatrist, Dr. Lauren Marassa, and she puts the electrodes around my head. They put me under general anesthesia. They induce a seizure that lasts between 30 and 45 seconds. And then I go into recovery. I wake up in recovery like I've woken up from a nap. and incredible nurses. Usually it's Jeremy and Betty, who I've gotten to know. It's become a very intimate experience over 6 months of this. And then I go home. And like, I don't, and let me give you, because my hope is someone out there may hear this and they have what is referred to as treatment resistant depression. Like they've tried all these different things and nothing's working. Please give ECT a try. Please. Because it just, and let me tell you what it's done for me. So in the past, when I would have a bad day, I would get depressed. Just how it happened. And if I got depressed enough, I would have at least at a minimum suicidal thoughts, maybe become suicidal. So about a month ago, after I'd had, I don't know, maybe 25 ECT treatments, I had a crap day. It was awful. Just like nothing was working. And halfway through the day, Marie, I literally stopped myself and I'm like, wait a second. I'm not depressed. What's going on? Like I'm not depressed. It's like, how can that be? Like, it's never been this way. But what is it? But I'm not happy. I'm not like singing and joyous and everything else. What is this feeling? What am I feeling? And you know what I was feeling, Marie? Disappointment. Like, let me tell you what. I can manage disappointment. The difference between disappointment and depression, that's what ECT has done for me. It is, I don't think about killing myself anymore. Just like, it's extraordinary. It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
It's miraculous.
It is totally miraculous. You know, God loved the soul who came up with it. You know, so Dr. Marassa probably is tired of me saying this, Marie, but every time I see Dr. Marassa, and at the beginning, we were doing 3 days a week. Like I was that bad.
Wow.
And now we're just once a month, and we're going to do once a month till the end of the year. And then we'll look to see maybe once a quarter, who knows?
Let me ask you a side question, because people listening to this are going to ask, is this a private pay situation or does your insurance help you?
You know what? My insurance pays every single dollar.
Wonderful.
I mean, I don't pay anything. I mean, I can't even think of another procedure. I'm not even talking about something like like serious as this. Like,
with anesthesia that they have 100% with.
It's incredible. Like I don't pay anything.
Do you still take meds?
I do still take meds. Take them every day.
Okay.
Take them every night. They're all at night.
It's keeping you balanced. It's keeping you balanced, though.
It's incredible. And it's interesting. I will share with you right now, because I think this is important. Right now, at this particular moment in my life, it's challenging. And it's challenging for 2 reasons. One, I have bone on my left hip and have terrible pain. So we tried to do a cortisone shot and that did nothing. And so I'm going to have to go get a new hip. I'm in most of the day and night, I'm in pain. So I'm going to make a point on this, I promise. Coupled with that, for reasons I do not understand, my business, which is going to speak and sharing my story, all of a sudden took a very unexpected lull. So I mentioned these 2 things like right now, life is hard right now for me. And you know what? I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed.
That's wonderful, honestly.
It's incredible. It is amazing. I don't know if the universe, it is incredible. I tell Dr. Marassa every time I see her, I say, Dr. Marassa, if anybody's hesitant, please give my phone number. I'm happy to talk. Because that's
a big deal. That's a big deal.
It is. So.
Well, you're just speaking about life is hard. It's not always easy. It's not always the ups. We have valleys, and we have mountaintop experiences, but a lot of life can be in between. the valley and the mountain.
Yeah. I think what I'm so grateful for in how effective ECT has been, the two instances or the two sets of circumstances that are causing me angst at a minimum were totally unexpected. They came out of the blue. I mean, because last year I was crazy busy. And then this year, for my business, and this year it's just like, what happened? I don't understand it. And then I have always been healthy, and then, like, how do you go from, like, all of a sudden you got bone on your left hip? So the two things caught me totally off guard. And in the past, Marie, I would have been I would have been depressed and suicidal terribly. And now I'm just disappointed.
And that's a realistic way to think about it. And what a blessing that you're in that place, just disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I have such great people. Since I got to brag on my eldest brother. So my eldest brother did 42 years in the Army, enlisted, and became a 2-star general. And he's my guy. So we've always been close. But when I had the breakdown I did at the end of last year, he started this new habit. Is not the right word. Started a new routine. And so here's the routine, and it continues to this day. Every morning, my brother John lives in Illinois. Every morning I wake up, and on my phone is a text from my brother. And the text is in 3 parts. First part is he shares with me what he's going to be doing that day. The middle part is guidance on what he would suggest maybe I focus on or do, and things that we've been talking about. And then the third part, Marie, is a motivational quote.
That is awesome.
My brother never misses. That's what I wake up to. And then I respond. We'll respond to him. And then every evening, you know who I talk to?
Nice.
My brother. Every night. It's incredible. It's just like, and then my fiance, who, pause for a moment, asked me to marry her, by the way, just saying.
Nice.
Deanna, my former bride, we never had children. Summer, my beloved, we have 3. We all live together, Ethan, Bella, and Gracie. And so now I get the gift of really trying to replicate, quite frankly, who I watched my 3 brothers be as fathers. Like, let me try to be that.
There you go.
On my best days. Yeah.
David, you have an incredible story. I want to talk about, as we kind of wind down, I really want to talk about your brother and how he texts you. Do you have any advice, or is there a professional texting system do you have any advice for people that may want to reach out to someone else? How can someone be like your brother to you? How can we be somebody like that? How can we endeavor to be that wonderful?
So let me answer that question in 2 parts. So there is an extraordinary psychiatrist named Dr. Drew Ramsey. He's very, very active on Instagram. Dr. Ramsey is an esteemed author. He's a professor at Columbia University. He's a farmer, very much into brain, gut health. And Marie, here's what Dr. Ramsey says, and this is really what I'm most passionate about, the suicide prevention work that I do. It runs parallel to what this extraordinary man says. And this may be the single most important thing. And then I'm going to answer the other part after this. But this may be the single most important, well, I think it's probably the single most important thing that I'll share on this my amazing time with you, is what he says. Someone you see today is thinking about killing themselves. Your smile, your question, your love could save them. Trust me, they told me it did.
Oh, that's so powerful. I actually think I posted something. I'm a I'm a cheerful poster on Facebook, and I will post anything like that, and I think like within the last 3 days I have posted something literally about a smile. Probably came from that person, that Dr. Drew Ramsey, and I didn't even know it. but wow, amazing because, yeah, it's simple.
Is that not amazing? So that's why, in my work, I want to make suicide prevention doable. So what I teach in my training, talks, whatever, and I'm just a storyteller. So, and most of them are animal stories, is recognition, understanding, and expression. So I teach people just become great with people's names. Remember people's names. Do that. And then leverage curiosity, questions of what, not why. What, when you see something you don't understand, and then express yourself. Let people know how you feel. Remember, someone you see today is thinking about killing themselves. Your smile, your question, your love could save them. Trust me, they told me it did. So the texting part is so awesome. And really, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. And I'll give you a story about me. So I have a friend. I love this guy. His name is Levi. I absolutely adore this man. And he fell into some terrible depression. And so it was actually his family called me and said, "Hey, would you reach out to Levi?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And again, I'm not a clinician, folks. Please know there are no initials past my name. Like I am a goofball in the biggest way. Like I have a PhD in picking up manure. There's my PhD. So I called Levi and I asked him, I said, and so this would be a suggestion for folks. Say, "Hey, brother, would you like to share with me? Would you ask him, would you like to share with me, how are you feeling?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we talked back and forth and everything else. And then people say, "Well, I don't know what I can do to support and somebody." And you know what I say, Marie? Ask the person. And so I followed my own advice. I said, "Hey, brother, how can I best support you?" And what Levi said is, "Just please stay in touch." I'm like, "Absolutely." So what I'll do is I like to go on Google and we'll type in a sentence like, so I think I did yesterday was, "I love you, brother." So I typed it in and then you can do images. And so I found some really cool art, took a copy of it on my phone and then texted Levi. And so he texted back, he said, "Thanks so much." And then over the course of us connecting over the last probably been a month or so, things really got better for him. And Marie sent me this text and he said, "David, thanks for reminding me who I am."
Well, it's so simple, but yet you made such a difference. Thank you so much. I so appreciate hearing that because I want people to know, I want my audience to hear this because at the end of my show, I
Right.
always say, "How can you help somebody else?" And this is the answer. And I think how this weaves into Hospice Explained, and I think really it's that a lot of the people that are going to be listening are either staff that have worked with people, that are working in hospice, sorry, or family who've lost somebody. And that's the difference is they might need somebody or they know somebody that's lost somebody. And I mean, we all know somebody that's lost somebody. And that can be putting somebody into a suicidal what next state. And I just want to make sure that people even think of that if, they lost the love of their life or a parent and they lost their rudder. How can we help them? And I think you've really given some ideas on how we can help other people. I so appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. I have one more amazing story on somebody.
Absolutely.
So, you look again, I think many of us, we always wonder what can we do to help. So I do a lot of work with the military, which is such a blessing because I feel like I get to honor my brother, my dad, is really John, the general. So I was working with a battalion. A battalion is about 500 to 600 soldiers, and this is in the Army. And so I did a series of, in the Army, when you give a talk, they call them briefs. So just what they're called. And it doesn't mean they're short. That's what they're called. So I had spent an entire day with this particular battalion, and the head of a battalion is a colonel. And in this case, it was Colonel Daniel Trouse. So at the end of the day, Marie, Colonel Trouse said, "David, could you please come to my office?" And I said, "Absolutely, sir." And so at the end of the last brief, I go to Colonel Trouse's office, and he says, "David," he said, I can't thank you enough for everything that you shared with my soldiers today." He said, "But David, I'll be honest, I'm upset." And Maria, I remember I was confused. And before I could, say anything, he said, "David, I'm not upset with you." So David, what you shared with me, what happened, what you shared with all of us, what happened in the Boy Scouts, I can't accept that. See, David, I was an Eagle Scout. He said, "David, the Boy Scouts played an enormous role in my life." He said, "David, who I am as a colonel, as a father, as a husband, as a person, I learned those lessons, those traits in the Boy Scouts. And to hear what happened to you at the hands of somebody who would say that they were a Boy Scout leader," says, "David, I can't accept that." And so I remember feeling like, that was just an incredible statement. And then Marie, Colonel Trouse took his hand and he pulled out his wallet. And he's facing away from me, and he pulls out what looks like a credit card. And so I'm confused. And he says, "David, when you become an Eagle Scout, they give you one of these." And then he turned the card around and he said, "David, this is an Eagle Scout card. Mine was given to me on November 3rd, 1998. He said, if you meet any Eagle Scout, no matter their age, they all have their card. It's that important to them. It's incredibly meaningful. It signifies that you have reached this milestone." And then Colonel Trouse gave me the card, and I held it, and I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. And Marie, I go to give the card back, and Colonel Trouse says, "No, you keep it. You've earned it." And so as I talk to you right now, I'm holding that card in my hand. I always have that card with me. And if you think about that extraordinary act, and I can't tell you how many times at the end of a talk I've had an Eagle Scout come up and show me their card. You think about what that man did because he wanted to try to take away some of the pain that I had carried. It's incredible.
I think it's beyond incredible. I think it really showed how deep you touched him, how much what you went through and how sorry he was for that. And I'm it's not common. I'm to be honest, I'm a little speechless myself.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty damaging to a soul. And David, do you have, I don't want to take away from this moment, but I do want to ask you, do you have something for people that have been damaged like that? Do you have a specific, is there a way to reach out? I know we have suicide hotlines but is there a route for somebody who's been brutalized, raped? What do you suggest for if somebody knows, for example, they have a loved one that's been hurt like this? What do you suggest for help?
No, I get it.
For the rape victims before that depression and self-harm thoughts come? What can we do to?
It's really, it really goes back to what Maya Angelou said in terms of, there's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story. To get that soul into the company of at least one other person.
Yeah, a safe person, right?
So they can share. And whoever that is. And what I would say to the person on the receiving end, your only job is to listen. That's it. There is no advice. And there's a quote that says, "Our listening creates a sanctuary for the homeless parts in another person." So the part that's raped is the homeless part. And all you got to do is listen. That's it. That's all you have to do. That can literally save somebody's life. So it's really to get, again, that soul into the company of at least one. And there can also be, I'm a huge fan of support groups. I love group is, I've been part, Marie, of all different types of depression support group, trauma support group, suicide support group, all kinds of support groups. And they're amazing because you sit amongst whatever number, could be 2, could be 20, doesn't matter. But it's not like you have to. The beautiful thing is, just being there, you don't have to explain yourself. You immediately just get to share how you feel, because everybody there gets it, totally gets it.
Right.
And it is, when you speak into the presence of people who get, when I put quotation marks around that,
Right.
what you're going through.
No, that makes sense.
There's no better medicine. There's not. It's just, yeah. And so I think, and the internet is a great source. So if you have somebody and this person is gone, all right, let's say you have somebody in your life and they were raped and you want to know how best to support them, and they're reluctant in their communication. I would Google, rape survivor support group and see what comes up. You'd be surprised.
How simple. Really, how simple. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I've always been amazed at how many different resources, when I do Googling like that, that are out there and available. It's like, wow, I think that's pretty cool. So, and especially now in the virtual world, there's even more availability. Oh, it's incredible.
Right. No, seriously, so much availability. I so appreciate it. Wow, David, you have blessed my audience. You have blessed me. You're just a wonderful speaker. I just can't thank you enough for taking some time to be on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, this has just been, I've been so looking forward to it. And I could talk to you for days.
Do you have a website or an email that's the simplest? Go ahead and give us that.
And please don't, if there's any, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, if you'll allow me, I'll give you my phone number. They're happy to call. Yeah. So if you Google David Woods, is my middle name, Woods Bartley, Bartley. If you Google, a bunch of stuff will come up. The most fun are, I was blessed to give 2 TED Talks. One is how connection saved my life, and the second is how to save a life by sitting down. There's just some really cool stories in there that I think people will like. Email David at davidwoodsbartley.com, and then telephone number 916-247-6389. Call, or if you have an organization you'd like me to come speak, I'm happy to come speak. I'm here to be of service. I just want to help. I want to give to the world what has been given to me. I don't want to keep it.
What a blessing. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you. Wow. Thank you. And audience, please take David up on his offer. Email, call him, or get him to speak. I have watched his TED Talks and I agree. And listening to him today, he's a wonderful speaker. So, audience, you would be blessed to have him. Thank you, David, for being on Hospice Explained.
Thank you, Marie. You are an absolute sweetheart. And thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. Hospice Explained audience, I just want to thank you for listening to this episode. It's a hard subject, rape and suicide, depression. There is help out there. David left his personal phone number. I also want to remind audience that there is a suicide hotline, and that's 988. You can call or text. I'll have information in the show notes. And the same goes for rape victims. And audience, there is a national sexual assault hotline. 1-800-656-4673. I'll also have links to all of these in the show notes. My blessings to each and every one of you. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining me on Hospice Explained. Think about ways you can make a difference in someone's life. Also, please subscribe and share this podcast with anyone who would benefit from listening. Thank you.